Let me ask you something real quick. If you've been a Pokemon fan for a long time, chances are you've probably heard or maybe even said something like, new Pokemon designs just don't hit like they used to. And honestly, that sentiment is everywhere. Every new generation, every trailer, every reveal, there's always at least a handful of designs that immediately get labeled as bad, lazy, or not real Pokemon. And what's interesting is that this isn't new. People were saying this back in Generation 5, they said it in Generation 6, they definitely said it in Gen 8 and 9. Somehow, every new era of Pokemon is the one where designs supposedly fell off until 5 or 10 years later when those same Pokemon suddenly get defended as underrated classics. So today, I don't really want to dunk on any new designs or blindly defend them either. I want to talk about why this keeps happening, why so many people feel like Pokemon designs are getting worse, even when the franchise has more artists, more technology, and more creative freedom than ever before. Is it actually a decline? Is it nostalgia? Is it changing art direction? Or is it just the fact that Pokemon by nature can't look the same forever? Because here's the thing. I don't think the problem is that Pokemon designs are worse across the board. I think the gap between great designs and bad designs has gotten wider, and that makes the misses way more noticeable. So let's talk about expectations, nostalgia, creative risks, and why new Pokemon designs spark so much controversy every single generation. One of the cleanest ways to explain why newer Pokemon designs get hate is this. A lot of people feel Pokemon shifted from creatures you discover to characters you meet. In the earlier generations, especially generations 1 through 4, a ton of designs read like wildlife. Even when they were fantasy, they still felt like they belonged in an ecosystem. You'd see a Pidgey and it's like, yeah, that's a bird Pokemon. You see a Sandshrew and it's like, okay, armadillo vibes. Even the weirder ones still usually felt like animals or monsters that could plausibly exist in the world. Now with newer generations, some Pokemon feel like they have a personality baked in so hard that you don't get to project onto them anymore. This is where the starter discourse explodes. People look at Cinderace and go, that's not a species, that's a soccer mascot. People look at Inteleon and go, that's not a lizard, that's a spy character. And you can debate whether that's fair, but I get why it bothers people. Because when a Pokemon looks like it's already a specific role, it stops feeling like a wild animal. It feels like a designed product. And to be clear, Pokemon have always had personality. Pikachu is basically a mascot. Jinx is whatever Jinx is. Mr. Mime exists, but the ratio changed. Now it's more common for designs to feel like they're meant to be a character you'd see in a cartoon rather than a creature you'd catch in the tall grass. So when fans say, new Pokemon don't feel like Pokemon, half the time they don't mean the art is bad, they mean the vibe changed from nature first to concept first. And once you notice that shift, you start noticing where it hits hardest, which is usually starters. Starters are the face of every generation. They're the first major designs people bond with, and they set the tone for the whole region. So when starters evolve into something that feels too human, too stylized, or too mascot-like, that becomes the lightning rod. A lot of fans miss when starters felt like animals that grew up, not like they took a career test at level 16. And I know that sounds like me exaggerating, but think about how people describe newer starters. Soccer player, secret agent, singer, drummer, magician, wrestler. Those aren't types of animals. Those are roles. Some people love that because it makes the Pokemon stand out and gives it identity. But for the fans who prefer natural creature progression, it feels like the starter stops being your Pokemon and starts being a character design. And bipedal forms are a huge part of it. It's not that bipedal Pokemon are inherently bad. Blaziken is bipedal in Beloved. Lucario exists. Plenty of classic favorites stand upright, but when multiple starter lines in a row end up humanoid and expressive in a very animated character way, the crowd that wants more monster or animal vibes starts feeling like the franchise is ignoring them. Also, starters are supposed to be broadly appealing. If the final evolution is super specific, that can alienate people. Like if someone wanted a sleek animal-like fire starter and the final evolution becomes sports mascot, that's where disappointment turns into, this design is trash. It's less about objective quality and more about expectation betrayal. And that disappointment gets even bigger when you combine it with something else people don't admit right away: nostalgia. Nostalgia is a loaded word because people hear it and think it means your opinion isn't valid. That's not what it means. Nostalgia just means your brain is emotionally attached to a certain era, so you treat it as the baseline. If you grew up with generations 1 through 4, those designs feel like the real Pokemon aesthetic. Anything that deviates feels wrong, even if it's not actually worse. And it's not just the designs, it's the whole context. When you were a kid, every Pokemon felt bigger and more magical because you had no expectations. You weren't comparing dex sizes or analyzing silhouettes. You were just like, yo, this one is a dragon! That emotional imprint sticks. So when people say, new Pokemon are lazy, sometimes what they mean is, new Pokemon aren't hitting me the way old Pokemon did when I was 10. And the funniest part is, we have receipts for this cycle. Gen 5 got clowned on heavily when it dropped. Now Gen 5 is having a whole renaissance where people call it peak design, peak story, peak vibes. That tells me the hate isn't purely about design quality, it's about familiarity, exposure, and the generation you emotionally imprinted on. But nostalgia isn't the only reason. There's also a specific debate that never dies: object Pokemon. The Vanillite discourse will never be defeated. Ever. People see an ice cream cone Pokemon and instantly go, lazy. And I get why it triggers that reaction. It looks like a literal object with a face. It's easy ammo. But Pokemon has been doing object with face since the beginning. Voltorb is a ball. Magnemite is magnets. Grimer is sludge. Ghastly is a purple cloud with eyes. Execute is eggs. Some of the earliest designs are extremely simple concepts. So why do people accept those but reject Vanillite or newer object-based Pokemon? I think it's partly presentation. Early object Pokemon were often framed as mysterious or industrial or environmental. Magnemite being a weird magnetic life form feels sci-fi. Grimer being pollution sludge feels like a monster born from waste. Even Voltorb fits the setting because it's tied to Pokeballs and tech. Some newer object Pokemon feel more whimsical. They're not, this is a bizarre life form that evolved around technology. They're more like, what if a keyring was alive? That shift makes people feel like the concept is random rather than world built. But again, this is taste. Some fans love the whimsy, others want the world to feel more grounded. Neither side is objectively correct, but they're reacting to different versions of what Pokemon should be. And this leads into a more technical point people don't always realize they're reacting to: modern art direction. Even if you remove nostalgia and remove humanoid designs, there's still a real design shift happening. Modern Pokemon tend to be more visually complex. More colors, more markings, more shapes, more accessories, more stuff. That can be good when it's done right, but complexity comes with a downside. If the silhouette isn't clean, the Pokemon becomes harder to read at a glance. Older designs often had strong, simple shapes that were instantly recognizable even as tiny sprites. The hardware forced them to prioritize bold silhouettes and readable designs. Now, artists have more freedom, but freedom can lead to over-design. If you add too many details, the Pokemon can start looking cluttered, especially in 3D where lighting, textures, and shading make details pop more aggressively. Also, the tone is different. Early generations had a lot of simple monster energy. Modern gens sometimes lean more into highly stylized energy. That doesn't automatically mean worse, but it means some fans will feel like the designs don't match their mental image of Pokemon. And sometimes the biggest issue is inconsistency. A Pokemon might look like it belongs in a different art style than the rest of the roster. That can happen when designs lean too far into character design rather than creature design. So at this point, it sounds like I'm just dunking on new Pokemon, but I'm not, because there's a strong counterpoint that matters. Here's the part people forget. Pokemon is a franchise that has survived for decades partly because it changes. If every generation looked like Generation 1, the series would feel stuck. Pokemon has always pulled inspiration from everything: animals, folklore, objects, professions, mythology, food, space, technology. That's not new. What's new is the balance and how aggressively some designs lean into their concept. And it's also important to say the quiet part out loud. Some people just don't like change. Even if a new design is well made, if it doesn't match what they personally want Pokemon to be, they'll call it bad design when it's really not their preference. At the same time, fans who love modern designs aren't wrong either. A lot of newer Pokemon have amazing creativity, stronger themes, better color theory, and more unique identities than some early designs. Plenty of older Pokemon are literally a bird, a rat, or a fish, and nostalgia carries them hard. So I think the fairest framing is, modern Pokemon designs aren't universally worse, they're just more divisive. The highs feel higher and the misses feel louder. And once you frame it like that, you can land the point you've been building toward without sounding like you're yelling at the fandom. And once you frame it like that, you can land the point you've been building toward without sounding like you're yelling at the fandom. Last point, and this is the big one. The new designs are bad argument is often a proxy war for something else. How people feel about Pokemon as a whole right now. When fans are frustrated with performance, rushed games, missing features, or the direction of the franchise, they start nitpicking everything. Designs become an easy target because you can see them instantly and argue about them endlessly. So sometimes people aren't just mad that a Pokemon looks humanoid, they're mad because they feel like the series has drifted from what they loved, and designs are the most obvious surface level symbol of that drift. That's why the discourse gets so heated. It's never just about a starter being bipedal, it's about a fan feeling like the franchise is leaving them behind. If you enjoyed this kind of discussion and want more chill Pokemon talks, gaming opinions, anime, movies, and just overall hanging out, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments what other topics you want me to dive into next, Pokemon related or not. I read the comments, I actually care what you think, and I'd love to turn some of your ideas into future videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay chill, Army.